Progressives across the country increasingly opposed the practice. Progressive activists, along with government reform groups and independent voters, pushed several states in 2018, including Colorado, Michigan, and Utah, to start using independent commissions rather than self-interested state legislators to draw legislative district maps. Eric Holder, a former attorney general under Barack Obama, headed a group called the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, whose mission it was to try to reverse the extreme gerrymandering that had allowed Republicans to exercise power in Congress and in several state legislatures in ways that were disproportionate to how citizens were actually voting. The push by New Jersey Democratic power brokers to enshrine partisan gerrymandering into the state constitution confronted progressives with a crucial choice. One option was to advocate on behalf of the constitutional amendment on the ground that Republican officials in other states were doing the same thing. Another choice was to remain neutral by neither actively supporting nor opposing the proposal. Pursuing either of these options likely would have resulted in the amendment's approval by the legislature and perhaps eventually by voters. Republican state legislators opposed the amendment, but they lacked the numbers to stop it. Both of these options had some appeal to progressives because if the constitutional amendment was adopted, it would mean more Democrats in the state legislature, which, in turn, would make it easier to enact progressive reforms on issues such as racial justice, economic inequality, and the environment. But progressives had a third option: to oppose the amendment on the principled ground that partisan gerrymandering is undemocratic because its purpose and effect is to maximize the power of certain voters at the expense of others. Partisan gerrymandering also prioritizes the interests of the political party whose elected officials happen to be in the majority at the time of redistricting over the public's interests. To their credit, most progressives in New Jersey chose the third option by strongly opposing the constitutional amendment proposed by Democratic legislative leaders. A large alliance of grassroots activists, union leaders, voting rights advocates, and racial justice proponents vigorously opposed the change. More than 100 activists and academics representing a broad coalition of groups, including the New Jersey Working Families Alliance and the League of Women Voters, testified at legislative hearings opposing the amendment. A coalition of 130 progressive groups in the state, led by the South Jersey Progressive Women for Change, organized a letter-writing campaign urging legislators not to vote for the amendment. The ACLU and the Brennan Center for Justice, organizations that had challenged extreme partisan gerrymandering in other states, also criticized the plan. Opponents held press conferences and protests aimed at pressuring Democratic legislative leaders to drop their proposal. Governor Philip Murphy also opposed the plan, explaining that, "I'm a proud Democrat, but I want to win fair and square, and this is not." Confronted with essentially uniform progressive opposition to their gerrymandering scheme, Democratic legislative leaders quickly changed course and withdrew their proposed amendment. For progressives confronting the New Jersey gerrymandering proposal, principles mattered. Rather than prioritizing the short-term political and policy gains that would result from an entrenched Democratic hold on the state, progressives chose to abide by the principle that partisan gerrymandering is undemocratic and should be opposed regardless of which party benefits from it. In a similar vein, this book argues that progressives, after living through the Trump era, should strongly support and defend three constitutional principles: federalism, separation of powers, and free speech, regardless of which party controls the presidency. These principles proved crucial in resisting some of the Trump administration's most misguided, harmful, and discriminatory policies. The Trump years presented progressives with a series of ongoing and seemingly existential challenges, leading them to spend much time and energy dissecting what went wrong in the 2016 election, how best to promote liberal social and economic